Wake up in the grind, clock ticking, 20 minutes flat, freedom main-handed, knives built where the real
What's up, and welcome back to another episode of the 20-Minute Freedom Project. I am your host, Josh Lopez, and this show is for those who want ownership, discipline, freedom, and to build a life they have always wanted, one that is earned and not handed to them. Today's episode is Don't Rush the Process. Now, that might sound strange coming right after the episodes Do Hard Things and Do It Anyway, because this isn't about slowing down out of fear. It's not about hesitation, and it's definitely not about playing small. This episode is about discipline and timing, because some people ruin their lives by waiting too long, while others ruin their lives by moving way too fast. And both come from the same place, and that place is impatience. A lot of people hear do hard things and think that means force everything. They hear do it anyways, and they think it means speed at all costs. But there's a third layer most people miss. Hard work without patience becomes recklessness. Action without respect for the process becomes destruction. If you don't understand the process, you will eventually sabotage the very thing you're trying to build. We live in a culture that is obsessed with speed, faster results, faster success, faster growth, faster validation, Amazon overnight delivery, or the same day shipping. Instant gratification everywhere you look. And somewhere along the way, patience got mistaken for weakness. But patience isn't inaction. Patience is controlled movement. It's knowing when to push and knowing when to hold. And most people never learn the difference. They only know two speeds, all gas or total avoidance. And both lead to burnout. Let me clear something up first, though. Moving fast is not the same as executing well. Rushing is emotional. Execution is intentional. Rushing comes from anxiety, while execution comes from clarity. Rushing says, I need this to work right now. Execution says, I'm willing to do this the right way, even if it takes longer than expected. And here's the truth most people learn the hard way. If you rush long enough, you don't save any time. You create cleanup. You rush the job, you do it wrong, you get to redo it. You get to redo it later under more pressure. And that's not speed. That's inefficiency disguised as urgency. People rush because they're uncomfortable being where they are, or because they have stacked their lives so full that rushing feels like it's the only option that they have left themselves. They rush their relationships. They rush their careers. They rush their business decisions. They rush the personal growth. They rush the emails. They rush the conversations. They're rushing commitments because sitting in the middle feels exposed. It's like you have a bad case of FOMO. You're no longer who you were, but you're not yet who you want to be. And that space in the middle, that drawn out process that nobody likes, that's where identity is actually built. And it doesn't feel productive. So people try to escape it or shortcut it. I want you to think back to when you were a kid. Your parents told you to clean your room, maybe do the dishes, maybe clean the bathroom. And we all didn't want to do it. So you rushed right through it, or you put it off, and then you rushed through it, and you half-assed the job. What happened? Your parents called you back to do the job again. And now you're probably more frustrated than you were before because you had to do it twice. But honestly, who caused that frustration? It wasn't your parents. You caused the frustration for yourself. You rushed through the process, and the older we get, that lesson still is around. It just gets more expensive. Picture this for a minute. You're building a house. The foundation's poured. The framing is up. But instead of letting things settle and making sure that you're doing everything exactly the way you need to, maybe measuring twice and respecting the process, you rush. You want to get it done. Maybe you skip some inspections or you try to figure out a way to avoid an inspection. You cut corners. You say, I'll fix it later. From the outside, it looks finished. It looks great. But over time, the cracks start showing up. Doors stop closing correctly. Walls shift. Maybe you have electrical issues. Maybe a plumbing issue. Things all start breaking down. Now, what should have been a steady process turns into constant repair, where something you have built, you should be able to enjoy it, but you're constantly calling a contractor or fixing it yourself because you rush through it. That's what rushing does to your life. It doesn't skip. And we can try to push it off, and we can do that in everything else we do, but eventually the bill comes due. And how are you going to pay it? Or you've added more frustration to your life that was unneeded. The process isn't an obstacle. The process is your training. It builds skills, discipline, patience, character, judgment. And if you skip the process, you skip the growth. And when the pressure hits, you'll collapse under the weight you were never trained to carry. Think of all the stories of everyone that has won the lottery. Their life changes overnight. But the problem is that they have never learned how to manage their money the way they need to. And so within roughly about 5 years, they're back to where they were before. You can also take that into professional sports. Someone gets into professional sports. They start making lots of money. They start buying all the fancy toys, the houses. They blow a bunch of money. And by the time that they retire, they have no money. Urgency feels like it's about importance, but patience is about the process. You can be urgent about your standards and patient with the timeline. That's maturity. Immaturity demands results right now. Wisdom understands that some things cannot be forced without being damaged. And the strongest people in the room are rarely the most rushed. They're the most grounded. They seem to get the most done in a day. They know anything worth doing is worth doing well. Rushing is often fear pretending to be ambition. Fear of falling behind, fear of being rushed, fear of being judged, fear of being average, fear of time running out. So people move early, before the foundation is actually solid, before the habits are actually built, before the character is tested. And then they turn around and wonder why everything feels unstable. Now let me be clear. Not all movement before you're ready is bad. You must act before you feel ready sometimes. Kids are a perfect example. You're never fully ready. You grow into it. But there's a difference between necessary growth and anxiety-driven rushing. One builds you, the other breaks you. If we take this into the faith aspect a little bit, and we look into the scriptures, and I can't remember where it is exactly, but it says, to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Not everything is meant to be happening right now. Not everything is meant to happen fast. Forcing timing doesn't make you faithful. It makes you impatient. Faith includes trust in the process, not just the outcome. Sometimes obedience to that looks like action. Sometimes it looks like waiting. And knowing the difference is true wisdom. Waiting feels hard sometimes because it exposes your insecurity. When you're waiting, you can't hide behind results. You're alone with questions. Am I good enough? Am I on the right path? What if this never works? Studies on delayed gratification show that the brain seeks immediate relief under discomfort. Rushing gives relief. It feels like you're actually making moves, but your patience builds the reward. And the brain prefers relief. It wants discomfort to stop now, not later. There's a well-known psychological study that proves this. It's often called the marshmallow study. Simply, its children were given a choice. They could eat one marshmallow immediately or wait an undetermined time, receive 2 marshmallows later. What the researchers found wasn't really about willpower. It was about discomfort tolerance. Waiting created psychological tension. Some kids couldn't stand the discomfort of waiting, so they took immediate action and got the reward and got the relief. Others learned how to sit with their discomfort. They distracted themselves. They regulated their emotions. They trusted that waiting was worth it. And here's why this matters in adults. The people who could delay gratification and could actually wait tend to have better long-term outcomes later in life. Better decision-making, more emotional control, greater stability over time, not because they were smarter, but because they could sit in the discomfort and be willing to push off the immediate gratification. That's the process. And when we rush something in our lives, what you're often doing isn't moving fast. You're escaping discomfort. You're looking for the immediate win. Patience isn't about doing nothing. It's about resisting the urge to trade long-term results for short-term relief. That's why waiting feels unbearable. And that's why learning not to rush the process is a skill. And we can tie this into the drifter and the operator. A drifter waits because they're afraid to act. An operator waits because they respect the process. Drifters delay out of fear. Operators delay out of wisdom. One avoids responsibility. The other understands timing. Patience is not passive. It's strategic. People overcorrect all the time. They spend years stuck, then rush everything all at once. They quit jobs overnight. They rush relationships. They jump into commitments they haven't earned. Not because they're clear, because they're tired of waiting. But the problem is relief is not alignment, and rushing to escape discomfort usually leads to bigger mess later. And you might be thinking, okay, but what does rushing actually cost me? It costs you peace, clarity, quality, longevity, time. It trades long-term stability for short-term relief. And most people don't see the damage until they're trapped inside it. So I want you to sit with this question, and I want you to ask yourself honestly, where are you rushing when you should be building? Where are you forcing an outcome instead of respecting the process? Because you're uncomfortable sitting in the middle. Where is that for you? And here's your challenge. I want you to slow down without stopping. I want you to stay disciplined without being reckless. Do the work today that tomorrow depends on. Not the flashy work, the foundational work, the kind that no one is applauding, but everything relies on. So you're going to go in your 4 areas of your life, and you are going to take that and you're going to find one thing in each area that you have been rushing. Maybe it is that you want your body to change quicker. Maybe you want your relationship to get better overnight. Maybe you want to make a quick win in your business or in your work life. You want to speed up the process of getting that raise or that promotion. And maybe in your faith and balance area, you're trying to rush your personal growth, trying to somehow learn all this stuff faster than anyone else ever has. Or maybe you're trying to get better at your faith aspect without the trial and error of learning and growing. Whatever it is, I want you to write it down in your notebook or your notes app on your phone. And that is what you're going to focus on for the next 7 days. Where have you been rushing? Where you should be building. Now, speed impresses people. Stability builds legacies. Anyone can rush, but few can wait with purpose. And the people who respect the process rarely need to start over. While there's going to be times that we will have to start over, but there is a less likelihood, if you built it correctly, that you will have to start over. You may not be where you want to be yet, but you know that you're building something that will last. Don't rush the process, not because you're afraid, but because you respect the weight of what you're building. Some things are ruined by delaying. Others are ruined by haste. Wisdom knows the difference, and to have that happy medium in between. If this episode has hit home with you, let it slow you down in the right way. And don't forget to share it with someone who came to mind while listening. And remember, freedom is not found in speed. It's built through alignment, patience, and discipline, and action over time. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and I will catch you guys on the next one.